The air in the Apex Tech conference room was thick with something I hadn't breathed in a long time: desperation. Not mine, theirs. I sat at the head of the long polished table, a place I had earned, not been given, watching the three people who had once held power over my life squirm in their seats. Across from me were the faces that haunted my memories. Mr. Thompson, my former manager at Innovate Solutions, his usually booming presence reduced to a slumped gray figure. Beside him sat my younger brother Ethan, his ambitious eyes now wide with panic, his expensive suit looking rumpled and cheap. And next to Ethan was Chloe, my best friend, the person I had trusted with everything, her face pale and etched with worry. They looked beaten, like they'd been running on fumes for months and the engine had finally seized. And they were here in my territory, at the headquarters of one of the most successful tech firms in the country, a firm I was now a senior executive at, because they had nowhere else to go. Mr. Thompson finally spoke, his voice a hoarse whisper that strained for a semblance of authority he no longer possessed. "Ava, thank you for agreeing to see us." He cleared his throat. Then the words tumbled out, laced with reluctant pleading. We need your help. The system, it's critical. Crashing. We're losing major clients by the day. Ethan can't stabilize it. We both know. Only you understand it. Only you can fix it. I didn't move. I didn't soften. I just held his gaze, then shifted my eyes to Ethan, then to Chloe. A small cold smile touched my lips. "Need my help?" I repeated, my voice calm, level, the sound cutting through the tension like a laser. "Which system, Mr. Thompson?" "The one I warned you would collapse if it wasn't fundamentally rebuilt. The one I offered to document, to train people on, but was told it wasn't a priority." I looked at Ethan. Or maybe the system Ethan declared was too outdated for his vision. When he took over, Ethan flinched. He started to speak, but no sound came out. "Ava, please," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "This is life or death for the company. For us, we made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But we can fix it. Together." "Together?" I chuckled softly, a dry, humorless sound. "Is that what we are, Chloe, together? Like when you, Ethan, and Mr. Thompson stood there 6 months ago smiling while you stripped the badge from my neck and told me I was being fired to save Ethan, while you treated me like garbage you were taking out." Their faces crumpled. The memory hung in the air, vivid and ugly. The humiliation, the shock, the pain of seeing the people I cared about most turn on me so completely. We were under pressure," Mr. Thompson stammered. "We thought it was the right decision, for the company's future, for Ethan's leadership." "You thought eliminating the person who actually kept the engine running was the right decision for the company's future?" I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping, becoming more intense. "You thought promoting someone based on ambition and empty promises, while sidelining the person with the expertise, the history, the actual code-level understanding. You thought that was leadership?" I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Their silence was my answer. They knew. Now. They needed me. I said, my voice shifting again, becoming more reflective, telling the story not just to them, but to the quiet hum of the city outside these windows, to the ghosts of my past. The person they had discarded, the person whose worth they had dismissed, to understand why they were sitting there broken and begging, and why I felt nothing but a cold, hard certainty. I have to go back to the day they taught me that trust is a luxury I couldn't afford. For 5 years, I was the invisible mechanic at Innovate Solutions. My job title was modest, senior systems analyst, but my role was anything but. The company's core operational software, the ancient beast that handled everything from client data to billing to logistics, was held together with duct tape and prayer. It was outdated, clunky, and prone to catastrophic failures. My job unofficially was to be the one who kept it breathing. I spent countless nights buried in complex code patching security vulnerabilities, optimizing database queries, writing custom scripts to automate processes that should have been standard features. I was the one on call at 3 a.m. when something broke, the one who flew across the country to fix a server in a remote office, the one who translated technical jargon for non-technical staff. I didn't just maintain the system. I had built layers of undocumented workarounds and custom solutions on top of it, just to keep it functional and efficient. I saved the company millions through increased efficiency and avoided disasters, but my contributions were rarely visible to anyone outside my immediate team. I was the reliable, quiet, underground IT guy. Except I was a woman, Ava Lopez, working under a title that didn't capture the reality of my expertise. My family life was complicated. My younger brother Ethan was the golden boy. Charming, charismatic, bursting with ambition, but lacking in follow-through or genuine technical depth. He was my mother's favorite, showered with praise and opportunities that I, as the more responsible, quieter older sister, rarely received. I loved him fiercely and felt a sisterly obligation to help him. When Ethan expressed interest in working at Innovate Solutions, a place where my quiet reliability had earned me a stable position even if it wasn't a flashy one, I pulled strings. I vouched for him, helped him network, coached him through interviews, and once he was hired in a business development role, spent hours teaching him the basics of how the company actually worked, how the systems operated at least on the surface level he needed to know, sharing insights I had gained from years in the trenches. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted my family to be proud of both of us. My best friend at the company was Chloe. We had started around the same time, bonded over late nights, shared frustrations, and dreams of getting ahead. Chloe was in marketing, sharp, witty, and ambitious in her own right. We trusted each other implicitly. I told her everything. My frustrations with the outdated system, my ideas for fixing it, my hopes for advancement, even my worries about Ethan's lack of practical skills despite his big talk. Innovate Solutions hit a rough patch. Financial targets were missed. Clients were unhappy with the aging technology. This created an opening. Ethan, leveraging his charm and my indirectly shared insights, managed to get the ear of the CEO's son, a rising figure in the company. Ethan presented a vision for modernizing Innovate Solutions, pitching himself as the dynamic leader needed to drag the company into the future. He used buzzwords like digital transformation, lean processes, and agile development, phrases I recognized from my own internal proposals that had been dismissed as too technical. As Ethan rose, I was systematically sidelined. No more invites to key strategy meetings. Emails I sent mysteriously disappeared from important threads. Projects I had been leading, critical upgrades I had planned, were reassigned often to Ethan or people reporting to him. I went from being the indispensable underground mechanic to being treated like a legacy system myself, outdated, inconvenient, and in the way of the shiny new future Ethan was promising. The atmosphere became cold. The unspoken message was clear. My era was over. Ethan was the future. And anyone associated with the old ways, like me, the person who actually understood how the old ways worked, needed to be phased out. The final blow wasn't a gradual phasing out. It was abrupt, brutal, and calculated. The company was still struggling, and to fully empower Ethan's new vision, they needed a clean break from the past. They needed to get rid of the person who knew where all the bodies were buried in the system architecture, the person who could call out the superficiality of their plans. My existence was a threat. It wasn't just about being phased out. To justify firing me, someone with my long history and knowledge, they needed a reason. A fabricated reason. Ethan, wanting me gone, completely worked with Mr. Thompson to manufacture a charge against me. The accusation was serious unauthorized access and misuse of company data. And the key witness, the person who provided the evidence, the person who signed the affidavit against me, was Chloe, my best friend. She provided emails, login records, manipulated or taken out of context, and signed a statement claiming she had witnessed suspicious activity from my account. The meeting was set up swiftly. I was called into Mr. Thompson's office. Ethan was there, standing a little behind Thompson looking serious. And then Chloe walked in, holding a manila envelope, her face pale but set. The HR manager, a friend of Ethan's from college, was also present, looking uncomfortable. Ava, Mr. Thompson began, his voice formal and cold. We've received a serious complaint regarding your conduct. He laid out the fabricated charges: unauthorized access, misuse of data, violation of company policy. I stared at Chloe. Her eyes flickered away, avoiding mine. That was the moment the pain truly hit, not the accusation, but seeing her there, complicit, actively participating in dismantling my life. Due to the severity of these findings, the HR manager stated, reading from a script, Innovate Solutions has decided to terminate your employment effective immediately. Mr. Thompson stepped forward. Your badge, please. I felt numb, humiliated. They stood there, Thompson stern, Ethan trying to look regretful, but a flicker of triumph in his eyes, Chloe pale and avoiding my gaze. They took my badge. They handed me a box for a few personal items. They treated me like a criminal, like I was dirt. Chloe managed a weak, forced smile. I'm sorry, Ava. It's nothing personal. It's for the good of the company. For the good of the company that was structurally unsound because they refused to listen to me, the company Ethan was planning to lead into ruin, the company Chloe was helping him dismantle, probably in exchange for a better position. A cold, chilling calm settled over me. I looked at Ethan, my brother, who had used my love and help to climb over me. I looked at Chloe, my best friend, who had sold me out for career advancement. I looked at Mr. Thompson, who had enabled it all. They thought they had won. They thought they had finally gotten rid of the inconvenient truth teller. A slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. Not a smile of defeat, not a smile of madness, a smile of dawning terrible realization. They thought they had destroyed me, but they didn't know what I had been building in the shadows. Okay, I said, my voice quiet flat. If it's for the good of the company. I picked up the small box they'd provided, containing little more than a pen and a stress ball. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just walked out, leaving them standing there, probably exchanging relieved glances, thinking they were finally free of me. They thought my smile was the last pathetic flicker of a flame being extinguished. They were wrong. That smile was the first spark of an inferno. They didn't know, when they were plotting my downfall, that I had spent the last 5 years building an empire right under their noses. 5 years ago, seeing the writing on the wall at Innovate Solutions, the stagnation, the resistance to real change, the political maneuvering, I realized I couldn't stay there forever. More importantly, I couldn't put all my eggs in a basket I knew was fundamentally flawed. I started a side project. A small, quiet venture with a shell company I registered under a series of anonymous legal structures. Veritas Tech. Veritas Tech wasn't just a hobby. It was where I poured my real innovation. I took the ideas for system overhauls I had developed at Innovate Solutions, the advanced security protocols, the efficient process automation methodologies, and built them into sophisticated, cutting-edge software tools. Tools far superior to anything at Innovate Solutions. Veritas Tech operated quietly, developing and licensing these tools to niche markets. It was successful, more successful than I ever anticipated. And with the profits from Veritas Tech, I started to buy, slowly, methodically, anonymously, shares of Innovate Solutions. Through different brokers, different holding companies, different names that couldn't be traced back to Ava Lopez, the systems analyst struggling at Innovate Solutions. I watched the stock price. I bought when it dipped. I bought strategic blocks of shares whenever I could. I kept everything separate. My work at Innovate Solutions, my identity, there was completely divorced from Veritas Tech. No company resources were ever used. All development was done on my own equipment, on my own time. I had documentation, legal structures, everything in place to prove my sole ownership and the independent origin of Veritas Tech and its products. And as Veritas Tech grew, as its profits soared, my stake in Innovate Solutions grew with it. No one at Innovate Solutions, least of all Ethan, Chloe, or Mr. Thompson, had any idea. They saw Ava Lopez, the quiet, slightly awkward systems analyst, who magically kept their old software from imploding. They didn't see the CEO of a burgeoning tech firm who was systematically buying their company. A week before they fired me, the final pieces fell into place. Veritas Tech acquired controlling interest, 72% of Innovate Solutions. Mine. The paperwork was signed sealed and legally binding. I knew then that a confrontation was coming. I could have revealed myself immediately. But I waited. I wanted to see how far they would go, who would make the first move to truly harm me after I was gone. The false accusation, the setup, the firing, the active participation of my brother and my best friend. That was their move. It was exactly the ammunition I needed. Their attempt to ruin my name to justify their actions with lies provided the perfect context for what was coming next. I left like a pariah, walking past colleagues who watched with pity or judgment, whispers following me out the door. It hurt deeply, but the knowledge of what I held gave me strength. They weren't finished. They thought they had neutralized the threat. They thought they were free to implement Ethan's vision without my inconvenient knowledge or presence. 2 days after I was fired, they threw a party at the office, a big one, to celebrate Ethan's ascension, the new era of Innovate Solutions. Pictures appeared on social media, Ethan holding a champagne glass, looking smugly confident, Chloe beaming beside him, looking proud and victorious. They were celebrating my professional death. They had no idea I had just bought their grave. They didn't know that while they were clinking champagne glasses, I was scheduling an urgent mandatory board meeting for that very evening, using my authority as the majority shareholder. The notification went out precisely at 7:00 p.m., just as their party was hitting its peak. Urgent ownership review. Mandatory attendance required. The boardroom was silent, tense. The remaining members of the board, senior executives who hadn't been involved in the plot against me, looked confused and anxious. They had been pulled away from the party, bewildered by the sudden summons. They whispered amongst themselves, casting nervous glances at Ethan and Mr. Thompson, who stood near the head of the table, looking equally bewildered. Chloe was there too, hovering nearby, her earlier celebratory mood replaced by a look of dawning unease. Who had called this meeting and why they hadn't authorized it? The door opened. All eyes turned. I walked in, not in my old comfortable underground IT clothes. I wore a sharp, simple, impeccably tailored suit. My hair was pulled back, my posture straight, my expression calm, resolute. I looked like I belonged at the head of a multi-million-dollar corporation. Because I did. Ethan gasped. Mr. Thompson's jaw dropped. Chloe's eyes went wide with sheer terror. Ava, Mr. Thompson stammered, finding his voice first. What? What are you doing here? You're not authorized. I didn't respond to him. I walked directly to the head of the table, the seat typically occupied by the chairman of the board, and sat down. My presence there, my ease in taking that seat, spoke volumes before I said a word. I looked across the table at the stunned faces. At Ethan, my brother, who thought he had stepped over me. At Chloe, my friend, who had betrayed me. At Mr. Thompson, who had signed my termination papers. Good evening, I said, my voice calm and clear. Thank you for attending this mandatory board meeting on such short notice. I paused, letting the surreal nature of the situation sink in. My name is Ava Lopez, and I called this meeting in my capacity as the majority shareholder of Innovate Solutions. A collective gasp went around the room. Whispers erupted. Thompson looked like he might faint. Ethan stared at me, his face white. I picked up a thick document from the table already prepared by my legal team. Mr. Davies, I said to the board's lawyer, a stern-looking woman I respected. Please read this section aloud. Mr. Davies took the document, scanned it, and her own eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. She began to read, her voice formal and clear. Certificate of stock ownership stating that as of date 1 week before firing, Veritas Tech holds 72% of outstanding common stock in Innovate Solutions. Further documentation confirms Ava Lopez is the sole and legal owner of Veritas Tech. Dead silence. The air crackled with disbelief. Ethan finally found his voice a pathetic, squeaky sound. Ava, you were just the IT person. I met his gaze, my expression unwavering. I was the person who kept the lights on Ethan, the person who understood the engine while everyone else was busy polishing the hubcaps. And I used the knowledge I gained, the skills I honed to build something of my own, something successful enough to buy this company. I gestured around the room. You taught me about playing the game, Ethan. You just weren't very good at it. I learned your rules, and then I played better. I picked up a second stack of documents. This one was different. This one held the proof. Now, I said, my voice hardening slightly, let's discuss the good of the company and the real reasons for my termination. I laid out the evidence emails between Ethan and Thompson, discussing how to remove me, manipulated login records, Chloe's signed false affidavit, recordings of conversations I had secretly made legal in my state, carefully obtained, where Ethan and Chloe discussed fabricating evidence and using the misuse of data claim. Financial transactions showing payments made to Chloe around the time she signed the affidavit. The room buzzed with shock and outrage. The board members stared at Thompson, Ethan, and Chloe, who looked utterly cornered. Ethan tried to bluster. This is a fabrication, lies. You're just bitter. You're jealous. Jealous. I stood up, my voice quiet but cutting through the chaos like a knife. I walked towards Ethan, stopping just a few feet from him. Jealous of what, Ethan? Jealous of being the golden boy who can't actually do the job, jealous of needing your big sister to hold your hand. Your entire life. I turned to Thompson. Jealous of being a leader who sacrifices competence for personal gain and lies to cover it up. I turned to Chloe. Jealous of a friend who sells out trust for a piece of the crumbling pie. My voice rose slightly, filling the room with cold authority. No, Ethan, I'm not jealous. I'm disgusted. I did this because you, Chloe, and Mr. Thompson betrayed me. You tried to ruin my reputation to bury me, all to facilitate a takeover based on lies and incompetence. You were a cancer on this company, and you were a burden on me and our family. I did this for the good of the company, yes, but also I did this for myself, to take back my name, my work, and my future from the people who tried to steal it. Todd tried to intervene. Ava, we were friends. I turned to Chloe, my gaze piercing. Friends don't sign affidavits based on lies to get their best friend fired, Chloe. Not for any promotion, not for any amount of money. You weren't my friend. You were just waiting for the right price. The board needed no further convincing. My majority ownership gave me absolute voting power. I looked at Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies, based on the evidence of gross misconduct, unethical behavior, and actions detrimental to the company's stability and reputation, I moved to immediately remove Mr. Thompson, Mr. Ethan Lopez, and Ms. Chloe's last name, from their positions at Innovate Solutions. The vote was a formality, unanimous with my 72%. Within minutes, their access was revoked, their company phones confiscated by security personnel who had quietly entered the room. Thompson, Ethan, and Chloe stood there stunned, defeated, the reality of what had just happened crashing down on them. I wasn't finished. I took 3 sealed envelopes from my briefcase. These, I said, holding them up, are their final severance packages, including 2 weeks' pay as per company policy. I looked at each of them in turn. Effective immediately, you are all terminated. Please gather any personal belongings under security supervision and vacate the premises within the hour. Ethan stared at me, tears welling in his eyes. Ava, you can't just erase us? I walked towards him, my voice low for his ears only, but firm. You erased me, Ethan. You and Chloe and Mr. Thompson, you fired me to save yourself. You tried to bury me. I'm just returning the favor. I walked out of the boardroom, leaving them standing amidst the ruins of their ambition and betrayal. Every eye in the outer office area where the party guests stood in stunned silence was on me. As I reached the door, I paused. I turned back, looking specifically at Ethan and Chloe, who were being escorted away by security. Oh, and Ethan. I added my voice clear enough for many to hear. That company trip next month to Bali, it's still on. You just won't be there. What happened next, I thought at the time, was the end of the story. I had taken back what was mine, exposed the betrayers, and claimed my victory. I was wrong. Life rarely wraps up that neatly. I didn't know how far they or others were willing to go to lash out when cornered. 3 days later, the strange calls and emails started. Anonymous threats veiled legal challenges referencing Veritas Tech's origins, accusations of fraud against the old Innovate solutions that were framed in a way to implicate my new ownership. I initially dismissed them as the desperate flailings of Ethan, Chloe, and Thompson. Annoying static. Then someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was taken, but my laptop was found open. Specific files related to Veritas Tech's early funding and structure had been accessed. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. I checked my security logs, cross-referenced digital footprints. The access used old credentials from my time as the underground IT guy, credentials that should have been deactivated. Only a handful of people would have known those specific backdoors, those specific old access points. Ethan, who I had trained, Chloe, who had been close to everything I did, and maybe Mr. Thompson tangentially. It had to be them, or someone they had instructed. They weren't just accepting defeat. They were digging for dirt, trying to find anything to use against me to prove my ownership wasn't legitimate to take me down with them. I later learned that Ethan had tried to pitch himself and his modernization ideas to another company using files he'd stolen. But the news of the mass firing and ownership change, and probably rumors about the real reasons behind it, had spread. Investors did their due diligence, found the scandal, and Ethan was blacklisted. Chloe tried to get a job with a competitor, but her role in my firing the false affidavit had leaked. I never revealed the details publicly, but in the world of tech, news travels fast and people connect the dots. They likely assumed I had leaked it a useful perception. She was also struggling to find work. They were ruined, and they blamed me completely. They were desperate, lashing out blindly. They thought they had found a weakness, the early history of Veritas Tech. Right when I was dealing with their desperate attempts to smear me, a letter arrived at my office. No return address, just my name and the Apex Tech building address. The envelope had a distinctive wax seal, a color and symbol I hadn't seen in 15 years. My heart stopped. 15 years. The last time I saw that seal was on correspondence related to Veritas Tech, back when it was just an idea two young people coding in a dusty warehouse. I opened the letter. Inside was a simple handwritten note. We know who really funded Veritas Tech. You aren't the only ghost in this story. Let's meet. Daniel Carter, my partner, the one I thought was dead. 15 years ago, Daniel and I were two tech enthusiasts with big ideas and no money. We started Veritas Tech in a rented storage unit, coding day and night. Daniel was brilliant, volatile, and restless. We had a major falling out. He wanted to take our core code, our nascent technology, and sell it immediately to a foreign investor he had connected with a group I had serious ethical red flags about. I refused. It was too soon, too risky, too many unknowns about where the tech would end up. We argued fiercely. He stormed off. A few days later, I got the call. Daniel's car had gone off a bridge in a remote area. The car was recovered, but his body never was. Presumed dead. I was devastated, but also relieved in a dark, complicated way. Relieved I hadn't caved to his pressure, relieved the tech was safe from the people he wanted to sell it to. I grieved him, and then I buried myself in work building Veritas Tech alone, honoring the potential we had both seen. I genuinely believed he was gone. If Daniel was alive, and if he knew about the funding, there was a period right at the very beginning of Veritas when we were truly broke, and Daniel had secured a small but critical amount of seed funding through a very unconventional source, a shadowy offshore account tied to that questionable investor group he'd been talking to. It was a loan, arranged by Daniel, that I had quickly tried to distance myself from repaying it as soon as Veritas started generating any revenue burying the records. If Daniel controlled that account, or could prove its link, it could cast doubt on the sole ownership I had claimed not just of Veritas Tech, but of Innovate Solutions, which Veritas now owned. It was a potential threat to everything I had built. The letter gave instructions an empty warehouse on the edge of the city midnight. I went. I had to. I pulled up to the desolate location. The warehouse was dark, silent. I got out of my car keys in hand, adrenaline humming in my veins. A figure emerged from the shadows near the entrance. Daniel, unmistakable. Older, a little harder, but him. My heart pounded. "Long time no see, Ava." He said, his voice exactly as I remembered. "Daniel," I breathed the name, feeling strange on my tongue. I thought you were dead." He smirked a familiar, unsettling look. That was the idea. Needed a clean break. Needed to disappear for a while. He walked closer, circling me slowly. "But I've been watching Ava, watching Veritas grow, watching you turn that little storage unit project into all this." He gestured vaguely back towards the city skyline, and it gave me a reason to reappear. He held up a USB drive. "Everything's on here, Ava. Proof. The initial funding for Veritas Tech came from an account I set up, an account I controlled. That means I am a founding partner, and legally I own 49% of Veritas." My stomach plummeted. 49%, enough to challenge my majority stake in Innovate Solutions, enough to throw everything into chaos. "You left, Danielle," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You vanished. You signed documents before you disappeared. Everything was transferred." He laughed, a dry, hacking sound. Details. That was all boilerplate back then. Just names on paper. He tapped the USB. "This is the paper that matters. Now I want in. Half the profits, half the control. Or I leak this to the board, to the media, to those clients you're trying to impress. I expose the shady origins of your perfect little empire." I felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. Just when I had defeated the people who betrayed me, rebuilt my life, claimed what was rightfully mine. A ghost from the past returned, not just alive, but claiming half of everything. I looked at Daniel, his face hard, expectant. He thought he had me. He thought he held all the cards. A slow, calm strength returned to me. The same cold certainty I felt in the boardroom with Thompson, Ethan, and Chloe. I smiled. Not the cold smile from before. A different smile. One that held a truth he didn't see. "You're not back because you want power, Daniel." I said, my voice soft but firm. "You're back because you're broke." His smirk vanished. "You wouldn't wait 15 years to claim 49% of a company this size if you were doing fine." I continued, stepping closer. "You've got nothing. That USB drive is probably just leverage, a desperate gamble." "Wanna bet?" he growled, taking a step towards me, his voice low and threatening. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a slim folder. "I already did, Daniel." I opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents. "I've known you were alive for a while," I revealed. "When Veritas started to really take off, I hired investigators. Not to find you, to find the truth about that seed funding, about that offshore account. Turns out that account wasn't a clean loan. It was tied to the very people I didn't want to sell to. Money laundering, fraud, messy stuff." Daniel's eyes widened, a flicker of fear appearing. "And I didn't just find it," I said, my voice gaining power. "I followed it. I worked with international lawyers. I bought the debt associated with that account. I acquired the legal rights to it. 6 months ago, around the same time I was buying Innovate Solutions." I held up the documents in my hand. "You used a ghost account, Daniel." "Well, I used it to bury you. Legally, that account is now under my control, tied up in so much legal red tape related to that old investigation that your claim to anything originating from it is null and void. You don't own 49% of anything. You are just a ghost with no leverage. Just then, security lights flooded the area. A team of my own legal and security personnel emerged from the shadows, having been alerted by me. Daniel recoiled, cornered. "You set me up!" he snarled. "No," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I just finished the story you tried to erase." As Daniel was escorted away defeated and powerless, I stood there in the floodlights taking a deep breath. The cold air filled my lungs. No more family drama. No more toxic friends. No more ghosts from the past claiming what wasn't theirs. I returned to my office at Apex Tech, or my new office at the revitalized Innovate Solutions. Let's assume the latter for a satisfying full circle. The next morning, I added a new plaque to my wall next to my degree and certifications. It read, "They fired the mechanic under the surface, but the mechanic built an empire." And below that, I added another line. "And when the ghosts returned, I buried them too, because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it's just permanent." I looked at the plaques at the city skyline stretching before me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about peace, a hard-won absolute peace. I was free. So after facing betrayal from her family, her friend, and a ghost from her past and emerging victorious, do you think Ava Lopez's journey was about revenge or something more? And how do you rebuild trust when the people closest to you have shattered it?